So I'm Michelle Baldwin, and I'm going to pass it to Taryn in just a moment. I work with Community Foundations of Canada with the transformation team. This work is really your collective network, and you've been providing some really great reflections. Big kudos to Setsi and team for our session last week, and we'll be doing some work to really, kind of roll up what we heard and make sure that we're moving forward with the brilliant ideas and thoughtfulness that went into that session. I just wanted to mention we do have Njoki Maburo, who will be sharing at our next session. Sometimes I wait till the end to tell you that, but you sometimes have to pop off. And Njoki's session will be Mindful Futurism, Embodiment and Rest as Praxis to the Work of Systems Transformation. So some of us have been able to navigate this, and Njoki was really sad not to be able to be here today. So I know that the recording is going to be something she's watching. So that'll be October 4th. So I am calling from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lunenpewauk people. And as we go into the session today, we know that there has been harm and oppression for many Indigenous communities as well as Black communities, and that as we look at how are we coming to this conversation today to really embody the spirit of healing, of mindfulness, and of really showing up in a good way in support of the work that is happening. And so thank you everybody for being part of today. And I'm going to turn it over to Taryn, who will introduce a bit more and as well as situate us with the topic we're going to work with today. So over to you, Taryn. Thank you.
Yeah, well, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, folks, but thank you again, Michelle, for passing that over. As shared in the chat, again, feel free to introduce how you're arriving and where you're arriving from. And as well as we shared the link to the weekly notes. We always post the recording, as well as the Otter AI notes and some other details as shared by Michelle, such as the National Observer series, and also any information shared by other folks in the group. So if you have any links or things of interest that you want us to make sure we're capturing, please feel free to share in the chat, because we always try to make sure to do so. And I guess with that, we can kind of just, move along in regards to our session today. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and specifically Kizito and your colleague, I believe you said Talani, is here with you as well. So thank you both for joining us. I know that I want to basically just pass the floor over to you to be able to kind of situate us in regards to the presentation. But yeah, it looks as though we had made note about discussing the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre, and sharing about the African Canadian Affordable Housing Village model. So I will throw over to you folks.
And just never remember to unmute myself. Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Trini, and Michelle, and everyone. I noticed a few people that I have met a few times. So it's wonderful to see you all. I don't know if Michelle didn't mention, but I was just off from Africa for my wedding. And I was supposed to present here before, and then a few things happened, and just ended up being perfect that we would do it in September. So I'm really excited. And the good thing about presenting now is that we actually have our prototype and our model complete now. So we're able to kind of share our final results in terms of what we've actually delivered, and what we look forward to partnering with the community, of course, the government and others to help achieve in terms of delivering the affordable housing for our members, but also for the general society, because the model we've created is not just for the African community. The focus was the African community, but we want others, whether it's Indigenous communities, other Black communities, and others who have similar values or approaches to living, to be able to take advantage of the model. So as you mentioned, Tolani is with me. She's one of my colleagues, and we'll just be looking through if there's any questions. Also, feel free, Tolani, to share some of our links, project links, whether it's the on the resources, the deliverable page links, and other pieces that people might have questions on. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll just get into sharing the page, if I can determine which one it is.
Maybe while you're doing that, I'll just remind people, feel free to put, if you've just arrived, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, because I know we have some new folks and we want to make sure that we're welcoming you with warmth and kindness. So back over to you, Kizito.
Thank you so much. And I'm hoping you're seeing the same thing I'm presenting.
Yes.
All right. So basically, this has been a project that we started last year in July. Caroline, please confirm if they're seeing the same thing. I'm looking at my screen is showing something different.
Yeah, we're seeing just the speaker notes there. Yeah.
Okay. That's not what I want you to see. How about now?
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Give me a second. All right. So it's been about 10 months that we've been working on this project. We've reached out to various groups within the African community. We've talked to experts, and some of those numbers I'm going to be sharing with you, sort of to give you an idea of who we've reached out to, and the feedback that we've received, and also, of course, what we ended up doing. In this particular presentation, I'm going to share, obviously, my story, sort of how we arrive at looking at the affordable housing, the model that we are putting together by going back a little bit and looking at some of how our ancestors and, of course, our people now live, and, of course, finding a way to bring that into the current Canadian affordable living. And so, of course, I'm going to talk about the affordable housing model and looking at some of the problems we found and how the designs that were put together to respond to that. Of course, we're looking at how do we implement this? What is the approach? Because of course there is the funds that we're looking at from CMHC, but that's not enough to create affordable housing. So how are we planning to actually get affordable housing done in partnership with communities? And then, the roadmap at the end of the presentation. But first of all, want to kind of give an idea of my background or philosophy to life. I think it's always important to be rooted somewhere. And for me, it is it's looking at the history. It's looking at my identity as a person, as a Black person, as an African, as a Rwandan Canadian, but most importantly, as a Canadian, and really trying to find that particular path for me. So we didn't just come up to this project because of funding. We always make sure, as an organization, we always make sure that the work that we do aligns with the mission, and the mission aligns with who we are as a people. So we always encourage people to go back and really identify, who are you? What are you trying to solve? Are you in alignment with your particular purpose? And so for me particularly, and for our organization, that's the journey. I founded the Rwandan Canadian Healing Centre in 2018. It was after I had struggled through PTSD and trauma to a point of suicide, and I'm about to just to share a story of what I ended up doing to not only respond and raise awareness, but also have a reason for living. Because at that point in life, I was, I did not see a reason. Of course, having lived through a genocide, having been a refugee for over 4 years, and then coming here and dealing with suicide, depression, you can imagine how anybody would be tired of that kind of a life. But I think I was lucky. I was lucky, one, not to commit suicide, but I was lucky, B, to find something to live for, which is I looked at the struggles and the challenges that I was living through, and I found a way to turn it into a challenge and lesson, but also to discover my purpose in life. So before I can continue on, I just want to share this story of some of you might know this story, but those of you who haven't, I think it's nice to kind of have an idea of why we're doing this and why it's important for us that we provide not just affordable housing, but as I say, and I'm going to talk about in a few moments, create a space for people to thrive. Affordable living is what we are after. Forgive me, do you hear the sound?
No, not yet. No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
The walk was 504 kilometers every single day, 10 hours in the cold, walking from Toronto to Montreal. Aphrodite Salas now with more of a story on a man on a mission.
Kizito Musabimana has seen terrible things in his life. He found refuge in Canada in 2000.
When I came to Canada, I was thinking, this is over, I'm good now. But then I made a mistake of saying, forget about everything. Forget about Africa, forget about the wounds, forget about all the things that we saw in '94.
On Monday, he was welcomed at Montreal's City Hall, invited to sign the city's Book of Honor after he walked 10 hours a day for almost 3 weeks to raise awareness about PTSD and survivors of genocide and war.
We're asking for a center for healing, because that's one thing I realized, that if you go and find people and you talk to them about these things, it helps.
He says it's something that Canada needs, especially after offering a safe haven to so many Syrian refugees.
My message was to make sure that we can actually be comfortable to talk about these things in order to feel, in order to really embrace our past, because these are things that we are not able to forget.
He wants the federal government to create a special trauma center for those with PTSD after living through genocide and war. His long journey was part of his public campaign called Home Again.
You know, you get tired, you want to stop, you know, you get to points where you're like, I could do this tomorrow, but then you realize if you keep doing that, it might take you forever to finish. So I kept pushing, and then I had to remember why I was doing it.
He did it so that those with the wounds of war deep in their hearts might not suffer as much as he did. Aphrodite Salas, CTV News.
So, yeah, that's, thank you. I think when some people, and this is something that we always like to point out, when some people look at what we're doing now as an organization, focusing on affordable housing, they're asking, sometimes they wonder, why affordable housing when your main mission is to provide mental health services, provide space for people to come and heal and, you know, learn about these challenges. And one of the challenges that we faced as an organization, we realized that you can't, and this is something I went through also as an individual, you can't really think about mental health and all these other challenges when you're going through socioeconomic issues. So what we've decided to do as an organization is also provide capacity, provide support for organizations, but also provide an environment. And part of that is where affordable housing comes in. So the big question, which is the next slide, is how do we as a society, create a world where living is affordable, not just for a few lucky ones, but for all. And I know that's something that we all in different ways are working to achieve. But when you look out there, when you look at the you know, some of the people that we've entrusted with the leadership, the government, the politicians and others, you don't have a sense of that urgency. How the priorities that are being taken by different, that the different approaches, you don't really see it because you wonder, why are we not able to get to that point? And I think personally, if you ask me, but maybe that's a question we should be asking out there for those of you that are with us. What do you think is the main reason why we keep talking about poverty and eradication of poverty, but never get to it? Like, what is that one thing that you think is the issue? I would like to hear maybe one person give us an idea of what is the one, because from, I don't know, for as long as I can remember, the world has been working to eradicate poverty, but nobody has ever been able to, has ever been able to really figure out the right way to do it, even within one particular society. And by the way, yes, feel free to raise your hand, feel free to type. I just want to have an idea of, because I think, and maybe my answer might be, I am always accused of being very optimistic. Go ahead, Louise.
Oh, I'm definitely team optimism.
Let's go.
I mean, I don't know if there's a one thing, but I would say the focus is on poverty and not on people as people. So the focus is on the problem and not on the humanity of people and the dignity of human beings and what human beings can and should be in their fullness, and that we are not our circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say if you were to offer like one particular answer that helps to get us to that point? What would it be?
Love.
Love? Wow. Go ahead. And I love that. Andrea?
My friend Geraldine Cahill recently shared with me a quote that was, "We act like systems in creating large-scale problems, but we act as individuals in trying to solve them." And I think that it's, and that was Rchc said that. And so I think sometimes we don't know how to work together to solve the problems that we are all contributing to.
And I think, and maybe that's what we are attempting to do in our approach to. Can you put that quote in the chat, Andrea? Someone is looking for that, and I love it too, because I think you're right. We are creating, for example, and again, I don't know where everybody is in terms of their politics, but if you look at what's happening globally when it comes to wars, we do it as a system. It's countries doing it, but then when it's time to solve the problems, we send in non-for-profits to, like, come on. So I think for me to answer this question, affordable living, how do we create affordable living? How do we create that society? To answer that question, I have to ask another question, which is, of course, going into what you both just said, what Louis said about love, because I think this particular element, reciprocity, is all situated in love. You have to have love in you to be able to practice reciprocity. And so, and this is something that our ancestors did, whether they did it well or not. It was a form of their government structure. So the question is, how can we transform those ancient practices and ways of life, such as reciprocity, to take advantage of a more connected eon? And I'm using the word eon because if we're really going to change this, we can't just look at 1 decade, 2 decades, or 1 century. We really need to think bigger and then do things that we might not even be able to see the result of. That's really one of the things that when sometimes we talk about living with a purpose, sometimes people misconstrue. Like, I think it's the idea of having a purpose is understanding that whatever you're doing is not for you. It's for the world. It's for the betterness of our society. And sometimes that means you might not live to see the results. And I think to do that, you have to really be, and I'm seeing, Louise, are you raising your hand? Yeah. If you are, please go ahead.
No, it wasn't me. I thought I had lowered it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's, I think for us, and this is the approach that I personally it's part of my philosophy, but it's also, I think, how Africans live their life. Is whether we do it the right way, of course, it's clear that we don't. But I think if you go into the systems in Africa, you see how people are connected, how everything is shared among different villages and different cities. You could see that that's something, if we can perfect it, we might be able to get somewhere. So to talk about the word reciprocity, reciprocity is one of the principles that was derived from the system of Ma'at. So the question again is, what is Ma'at? Does any of you know what Ma'at is? Anybody? Okay, maybe a guessing question. This is, I only know someone. Oh, that's cool. So, and I'll just go to it. Ma'at is a system that was practiced by, was a law practiced by ancient Kemites or ancient Egyptians. And it had 7 principles, and those 7 principles were truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, propriety, and reciprocity. Of course, I Googled it. Cool. And this is these are principles that we all know. We understand them, but do we actually practice them? And for me, the one principle I wanna focus on is reciprocity, obviously, for the purpose of these project, but also the initiative that we're putting together, which is how do we actually practice reciprocity in our everyday life? How do we create mutual exchange of energies? And how do we as a society or as a community be cooperative fully, create exchange that is actually equal. And when we say equal exchange of energy, it doesn't mean that if I give you this, you have to give me the exact equal. It means if I work 8 hours to do something and that's what I can deliver, whatever you do in those 8 hours and you deliver for me should be that's how we look at reciprocity. Reciprocity doesn't mean if I give you $1,000, you have to give me something of equal value. It means you give me something of equal value in energy, not necessarily in a monetary sense. So when we think of reciprocity, we go back to the love piece as opposed to because when you think of the current modern world, everything we talk about love and all, but when it comes to the actions and everything that we do, we forget about that love that we usually are supposed to lead by. So part of the word reciprocity is, and that's why I was saying I loved it when Ruiz mentioned the word love. That's the key word within the word reciprocity. Really, it's not. Of course, there is the give without expecting an outcome. That's mostly what we do in the non-for-profit world. But the true essence of reciprocity is the balanced reciprocity, where you're giving and taking. It is an equal exchange. One of the challenges, especially within the African communities, especially on the continent, is a lot of people come to Africa and they take more than they give, and therefore we are not having the development that we should have as a society, because we're stuck in the giving mode. And the most of the groups that come into Africa come in just to take. They're not bringing back the same value that they're giving. And so we think this was really our approach in an attempt to create that kind of community. For me particularly, and this is, like I say, this is something I've done throughout since my awakening, since I determined, okay, this was what I was going to do. Part of that was establishing an organization that can actually working with the community that can actually deliver these kinds of results, bringing people together. Of course, advocating for the community, especially for the African community. That's mostly where my work is. raising awareness on mental health issues, and of course, the rebuilding piece, which is what we are here to talk about. So, and I think going back to the question of how do we create affordable living, I think we create affordable living by working together. I think we create affordable living by finding the common piece that we all share, and for us, I think for all of us, we agree that we live in this world together, and the best way to do it is to come together. At least we think that's what is going to work for the African community. So when it comes to the affordable housing for the African Canadians, the approach we took was to create the village, the African Canadian Affordable Housing Village, that allows not just for units, for affordable housing units, but it also it gives opportunity for people to have access to everything that they need. The only thing you would have to worry about living in this village, and when we say village, we're not talking about just like you have how many different, like the village could be one building, as long as you structure it in a way that people have everything they need, people are connected, people know one another, people understand what each one is going through. So when somebody's going through something, you can actually go ahead and help provide that kind of support that they need. So we're looking to create interconnected community as opposed to just what we, and this is one of the challenges that a lot of the people from the continent face when they come to Canada, is getting used to living in apartments or communities where you don't really know who your neighbor is. And when you try to get to do that, sometimes, especially in the lower income communities, that's not welcomed. You're not welcome to do those kind of things. It's usually when you get in high-end communities that you are able to actually connect with people. But in the low income communities, connecting with people is not something that is welcome. And that's really a challenge for many migrants, especially from the African community, because they want to connect. Like one of the work we've been doing most recently with the migrants that have been on the street, the thing they appreciate the most is that we've found a way to keep them together in the churches and other places, because they can actually connect and get information. So affordable housing for the African Canadian community is kind of the same approach that we're taking. And we, like I said, we've been doing this for the last 10 months. We delivered the model to CMHC in June, end of June, and we are about to enter into phase 2. We have about 6 different partners. Some of them were groups that came together. So the Ghanaian Association, the Kenyan Association, the Eritrean community, the Network for the Advancement, of course, the Rwandan community, and Rchc Design. We spoke to about 250 people in our focus groups. And among the 250 people, we had about 15% were experts, community leaders about 20%, and the people with living experience, obviously, who we were looking to hear from the most, were the most 64%. We've also presented to over 1,000 people. This is going to different events and presenting and hearing the feedback from the community. And it took, we really took in, like, I would say the model was developed by the community. We just happened to be the group that gathered the data from them. And of course, the focus on the affordable housing, as far as the main result of the model of the project, was to provide two concepts of the affordable housing. One we called the mini village. Mini village is basically anything from 0 to 1,000 units, and then the ultimate village, which is 1,000+ units. So the goal is to implement the mini village within the next 3 years, and then anything for the 1,000 units, we'll be working for at least, we're giving ourselves at least the next 7 years to finding the land, to partnering with different groups, and of course businesses, because we're looking to create something large. And so hopefully people like yourself, if you see something that you would like to connect us with people, keep key players within the space. That's where we are right now, kind of mapping out everybody. So yeah, we had about 8 prototype ideas. The main one, of course, being the multi-generational affordable housing, and then we understood, like I said, we wanted to create an interconnected space. So making sure we foster that interconnectedness, having access to relevant education and skill development, and then like some of these I'm gonna go through, so I'm not gonna read them to you right now. But the idea was to make sure that we create that community where everything that you need as an individual, as a resident, is there for you. And then, of course, if we do, especially within the mini village, if we're creating that in a space where some of these elements are, of course, we don't need to worry about it. And that's mostly likely what's going to happen. But for the ultimate village, the 1,000+ units, the goal is to have everything that is here, so members of the village can have everything they need and then worry about, going to work and all that stuff. But in terms of going to gym, going to, buying groceries, especially the cultural foods, it's all gonna be there. And then, of course, how did we arrive there? We talked to people. We wanted to understand the main issues, and that's how we started the project. First, we wanted to map out the problems that people were facing by talking to mothers, young people, community leaders, and these were the main ones. And I'll say the one particular one that kind of stands out above all is the second, which is systemic barrier that prevents inhabitants from finding pathways out of precarious financial situations. And this is something we're looking to create. So, I'll just again ask Tarani, if you see any questions, please let me know. And before I present, so I see a question here. Tarani, you mind reading out the question for me if you are okay to do that? And I'll just go to the next slide.
Absolutely. So this question is from Alex. It says, you mentioned multi-generational housing, but what initiatives are in place to promote interaction between different age groups within the community? Finding ways for the buildings to feel like a village is such a huge aspect of what you're trying to achieve, but he's interested in how you are incorporating intergenerational community initiatives. It's a great question.
So that's an incredible question, and I think that's what we spend a lot of time around that. So I'll just answer that question, but I think through our presentation, you'll also see some of the answers there. So we've created within that, for example, we have fireplaces. For, for example, in the evening, the residents can go to fire chat spots and create fireplaces that are all season. So in winter, they can be closed with glass or whatever. We'll see how that can be designed. But seniors can share stories with young people. We have places for women to teach, elder women to teach young ones how to do traditional sewing, different crafts. We have interactive spaces. We have community kitchen, for example. So we've created, and these are like some of the most important elements within the model is those pieces that we want to make sure that make it with the principle. Let's say, for example, for us, and we are going to be implementing this, if we're getting a principal loan from CMHC, those pieces have to be part of that principal loan. Then we can think about partnerships and things like that, but the principal loan have to include those elements that allow people to connect, that provide the cohesiveness within the community. So yeah, I'll go to, I'm gonna present the first, just the first design, and this is one I'm showing it to you from directly from the lab. We didn't remove it from the model, we delivered it as is, but we've created, of course, we've created some blueprints that are better, in terms of measurements and design. But I want to go back to this, and the reason why I want to show this is like I say, we wanted something multi-generational. If you have a grandparents and you have children, especially most Africans, especially newcomers, tend to need those things. We wanted to have one particular location, one home that can be used for that family. So you have upstairs, downstairs, you have living room, you have playroom, you have bedroom downstairs, and then you have the bedroom downstairs is if somebody is in need of accessibility needs, so they could have a bedroom downstairs. And then we have different designs, of course, that allows for just one flat, 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom. And that's really our focus in this model has been 4 or 5 bedrooms. We have options for 3 bedrooms, but the main focus for us was 5s and 4s, because that is the market, that's the audience that we're targeting, is mostly newcomers, I wouldn't say newcomers, but mostly the multi-generational families, which especially within the African community is a big part of that community. So you see here, we've kind of redesigned it to make it more proper with the measurements and all that. But again, these are just prototype designs. When we actually have the land and we can actually create a blueprint for that, that's when we'll have the proper measurements and designs for it. But yeah, go ahead, Louise.
I was just thinking, as you were showing those units and those designs, talking to some African Nova Scotians here who are in the context of homelessness and unhoused, it has never left me. I was talking to somebody from the North End that said, people think that there's no homelessness in the African Nova Scotian community, but homelessness looks different for us because we will take somebody in and they'll sleep on our couch. And what I like about the larger homes is moving away from this kind of like individual family, nuclear family context of building housing, is you're really embracing this kind of extended family approach, not just multi-generational. So I just wanted to call that out for the people that are going to watch the recording later, that for me, what I'm reflecting of what you are showing here is even showing up in African Nova Scotian communities here, where there shouldn't be an assumption that people are not homeless or unhoused because you're not seeing them visibly in encampments or on the street. Living with family or friends and sleeping on couches is the same as being unhoused. And so how much more dignified and loving to have spaces enough that can accommodate people who are in there transiently, but are still part of this village and belonging.
Absolutely. And then, and by the way, this model is available. We'll actually find out from CMHC when it's going to be published. Anybody can take this and feel free to reach out to us if you need any advocacy or partnership. It's available for anybody to use. And to add to what you just said, right now, as you know, we've been dealing with the crisis of migrants who are sleeping on the street. And what the story that has not been told or heard is the hundreds, actually we have about 1,000 so far, that are across the city, Hamilton, North York, and Ajax, where people have stepped up and took them in. And these are people that are sleeping on the couch. These are not people who have extra bedrooms and whatever. These are people who are just saying, no, we cannot allow our people to be on the street. So imagine if they had the options, because a lot of the time, most people get the biggest, when it comes to apartments, the most you could get is usually 3 bedrooms. If you get 4 or 5, you're in luck. So, and then I've seen also, we've been visiting different developments across the city, and it's very rare that you find 4 or 5 units. Usually, if it is, it's for newcomers, and so we're looking to create more of that, especially within the larger cities, and I consider Halifax to be one of those cities. And I know Halifax is growing, so definitely an important part of where we need to go as a society is making it so it's not just the nuclear 3 bedroom, 2 bedroom. We need to think our family, our groups, or think about the people that we are bringing into the country and respond accordingly. My question on this one, as you say, is what do you think was the most important idea brief next to multi-generational housing? What do you think? So all of these different idea briefs or prototype ideas. So what do you think our group and the community decided was the next most important piece? Should we give them a hint, Talani? Healing. Okay. Luis says healing. Anyone else want to take a guess? So it is Luis, not okay. Food insecurity as well.
I think now you can give a hint.
Okay, so it is definitely, it is one of the gold. It is within the gold ones. So it's gonna have to be. So community is a general. Maybe unless you meant community kitchen. I don't know if people can see the screen.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so community kitchen is one of the important ones, but the most, okay, that's close. The second most important one was having access to relevant skill and education and this is, again, we're talking about most of our audience are newcomers, and so having a place for them to go and learn, and kind of integrate into the society, a place for them to go if they were looking for employment, shared libraries. Those are that became important for the community. For us, it was important, and say us as a group, because in order to make the affordable housing work, is we want to create a space or an environment where people can come in and grow out. So how do we get them to grow out of affordable housing, not out of our buildings, but out of affordable housing? The only way to do that is by creating, to grow their revenue, to grow their income status levels, by basically giving them education. So if it's young people, how do we support young people in that? If it's new immigrants, how do we support them? So, and this is something that we are dealing with right now on the ground, where you have people who are coming in with master's degrees, but still are not able to transition into the Canadian market. So we want to be able to provide support for them to get the equivalent in terms of the documents that they need to be able to enter into the Canadian market and eventually grow out of affordable housing and into the market rental. So to do that, we need this program. So this program has to be part, like I was talking about with communication, this program has to be part of the principal loan in order for the model to work. And then the next one was community kitchen, which we talked about. And the community kitchen is more about the interconnectedness. And I'm going to talk about the interconnectedness again in our interconnectedness prototype. But the community kitchen was so crucial. Even some of the affordable housing communities that we're visiting now, we're seeing that a lot of them underestimated how important community kitchen is, because a lot of these people want to come together, share recipes, and of course here there is an opportunity for us to even create revenue for the housing. But the idea of having a community kitchen that brings everybody together from different backgrounds, because as you know, the African community, hundreds and hundreds of backgrounds, different cultures, values, different ways of cooking, being able to share that, it's always incredible. And I probably should go quickly because I feel like we're running out of time. So the other piece that we definitely found important is the being able to have energy and environmental conscious designs. We've been looking at the models from different parts of the world, and biophilic designs have, we want to bring this to Canada. We understand it's winter. We don't know how to do it so far where we can actually have it throughout the year. But part of it is being able to bring all season plants. But if you look at Singapore and some of the designs that they're doing in Singapore, that's something we would like to duplicate or at least recreate here. But within the affordable housing, it's going to be a challenge, but that's something we are working on to really make sure that we create something that brings environment, brings nature into homes. On another side, we also want to make sure that it's green. We're creating, we're making sure that we're saving energy. Part of it, I was talking to people we visited the last week about how Apparently the side that faces the sun the most, on buildings gets old first. So what we're looking at is how do we, instead of exposing that side to the sun, right? How do we actually put solar panels on those sides? So we are actually we are benefiting. So those are some of the partnerships that we intend to create to be able to actually save energy, but also protect the building from getting old because of the sun, which is incredible. Like all these things you will never know until you go out there and find out from developers and building managers of how can we actually create energy saving, but also how do we maintain our buildings for the long term. The other piece that because we don't go through all our slides the way the actual model is. If you want to look at the model, it's on our website. Tolani, if you can please share the website where our deliverables are for people to go take a look at the actual deliverables as they came. We had I believe maybe 12 different deliverables over the course of the 10 months. But what you're seeing above is the one for fostering interconnectedness. This is where we want to achieve that interconnectedness piece. So you have, as we talked about, I talked about the fireplace. Talked about obviously we have games for young people. We have cultural food marketplace, library, African shops. This, by the way, the way to achieve this is a question that I have for you just coming up. Think of how do we actually achieve this? If the principle only allows you to do so much. Anyways, but we do have restaurants, we do have places for people to go do different arts, space, music, crafts, different things, multi-generational book clubs, multi-generational learning. I think that's one of the things we share. This is where adults can come and teach young people within the village, but also vice versa, young people can teach adults, especially around technology. So that's some of the things we're creating within the fostering interconnectedness. But also we would like to have space for traditional and civic engagements. Of course, that's the usual community center programs and multi-generational transformable, multi-purpose transformable hall. This is more the most important piece here. If we don't achieve anything else here, we at least have this multi-purpose because that can allow us to do different things. But my question to you is, and what do you think we need to do? By the way, there's a question there that I would like for you to look at, Tolani. But what do you think? How do you think we are going to achieve this? That's something I want you to think about, and I want to present this piece here first before we get to that question, and which is the cultural appropriate healthcare partnership. The reason why we wanted a cultural appropriate healthcare is, again, because a lot of our people are newcomers. A lot of our people are going through, let's say people who are going through mental health, as I did. When we're going to see professionals, psychiatrists and so forth, a lot of the time they do not understand what we're going through because they can't put themselves in our shoe. They never really, and this is things that I really went through personally, and it was a struggle to ever find the right people to actually talk to for them to understand and be able to prescribe or at least understand whether I was just kind of, out of it, or it was just something that they could be able to sit down with me and to help me move through and be a functioning member of society. So we want cultural appropriate healthcare because that helps bring in professionals that actually went through or are living through these communities that understand what these members are going through. So, and again, what you're seeing here is if we had the ultimate village, when we get to the ultimate village, we can have all of this. But for the mini village, we were just going to pick, let's say the mental health services would be the only service that would provide there versus having all of this. So it's really important to go back to, it's not enough to just walk into traditional clinics, because a lot of our people are really facing long-term effects as a result of this, because they're not being helped sufficiently, and that's something we also like to resolve through this program, this model. And then of course we have the recreational partnership, which is where we want to work with other. Maybe I've just answered the question. Let's see, Talani, if you can read some of the questions in the chat before I jump to this one. I need some.
So the main question that came up has to do with just explaining what you mean by the principle only allowing so much. And I think I've been able to answer that. Beyond that, there were a few comments. So, for example, Alex, I believe, was answering your question actually. So perhaps, Alex, if you want to share that yourself, otherwise I can read it out.
I'm happy to. I think, are you referring to the funding part?
Yes, you said something about innovation.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking, looking at how holistic your approach is. I think the only way to do it is to find basically a way to have a collaborative between funding parties. So because if you're doing a community hub or innovation hub within the village, that could have a completely different funder than, for instance, the building of the affordable housing itself. But the key would be to get them all around the table to understand the different facets of what you're trying to do, which is something that we're trying to get funders to do in communities overall. Your approach is a community in and of itself. And I would see that that is really needed in this case. And it's not, obviously it's ambitious, but like, yeah, I think your approach is really, really great.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's really the route we are taking. It's talking to, like for example, let's think of recreational piece that I just shared there. It's talking to people that are already providing that service, and you say, okay, this neighborhood, this area needs this and this. Would you like to be in partnership with us as we are about to, let's say, put up 2,000 units in this neighborhood, and there is nobody serving those people? That's the approach we are taking. Whether it's the recreational piece or healthcare, a lot of the healthcare, on the healthcare side, we want to talk to professionals, especially within our community, and say, okay, maybe this is an opportunity for you to now set up your own clinic, as opposed to, so part of it is if those businesses already exist, we want to ask them to expand. If they don't, how can we encourage them to actually now take that opportunity to set up something? So it's definitely creating those partnerships with some of on all of the elements that we shared, especially the ones in blue. If I can go back to it, and maybe I won't be able to share it, but anything that would say it's not a must-have, but we know it's important for our model, we are going to partner with community members. So like, for example, Afro shops, it's not a must-have, but it would be great to have. So how can we partner with some of the people within our community that are already doing businesses, but ask them to actually put those shops within our village, within our community? Community kitchen, the same thing. Instead of course, we can do community, gathering, cooking together, but we can also invite our chefs to come in and make some meals that we can actually send out there and create revenue for the housing programs. So that's really the approach we're taking, and we're kind of right now we have I will actually go to the next slide, which is where we are going, project timeline, our roadmap. Our roadmap, we are right now within our roadmap. Our target is to identify a pilot site by the end of this year. We've actually been in talks with the city of Toronto, hopefully to get a response from them before the end of even this month. So we have an idea, because everything else depends on having a site. And of course, the site we're looking for is, getting land trust for at least 100 years without having to spend a dime, because that also allows us to create, that gives us more space for the affordability piece. So getting that, creating a committee, obviously leveraging our network, including being able to come here and share with you, so we can hear some of what you think, your advice, and then once we have all of that in place, then we're going to enter into the implementation. Obviously, the first thing is to do feasibility study, which we've started on, performer you know, the pieces that are necessary in order to go to CMHC and say, this is the proposal, this is what we're going to develop, you know. And the good thing with CMHC is there is no limit to how much you can do as long as it makes sense business-wise. There is no limit to how much you can ask for. And that was really great for us to hear. And then something that I might not have mentioned previously for us, you know, obviously I shared the video, talk about we want to create a healing center. For us, the main piece as far as affordable housing, we've always said, as long as we can put a healing center in that affordable housing, we are good to go. And so, and that allows, within the principle that we get, we will be requesting from CMHC, there is a 30% that you could use to do anything. So let's say if it's $50 million, 30% of that you could use for community center, you could use it for whatever your community needs. And for us, the main piece is the healing center. So yeah, and I think we can go into Q&As. And maybe what I want to say is, you know, we started this project thinking about the fact that the African community are multi-generational, and therefore, in order to solve the affordable housing within the community, we have to have an approach that is multi-generational. And in order to also solve those challenges, we have to think about the holisticness of the needs that the community, of the needs within the community. Because if you just solve the affordable housing issue, most of those people might get stuck in affordable housing. We want to make sure that they go through a graduation program that allows them to actually go out into the society and not be stuck in the affordable housing. So thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to, any questions, any ideas, any advice, because again, this is, for us, this is a journey. This is a journey that I was, initially when we submitted a proposal to CMHC, we were looking at, we're gonna do this and go implement and get our building, have a healing center and kumbaya. But now, especially looking at the crisis in Toronto and across Canada when it comes to lack of homes and lack of affordable housing, I think we might have to be in it for a while. But please feel free to, I'm gonna stop sharing and feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you again, Kizito and Talani. Talani, I'm not too sure if there's any questions you had captured that you wanted to share.
Yes. I just wanted to read Lynn's question, unless she would like to share it herself, but I'm happy to read it. Okay, so Lynn said, these designs look amazing. I'm sorry if I missed it, but I'm wondering where you are in the process. Looking now for funders, developers, land partners to make it happen. So I think you talked about the roadmap, but maybe you can go a little bit more specific about, you know, funders, the developers, and the specific people that we're looking to partner with in our roadmap.
So right now we are looking at first we're creating a committee, a team that's gonna take us to the finish line as when it comes to developing the first pilot. We've been talking to different developers, but I would say it's too early to say that we have determined who the actual developer is going to be. And also the challenge is a lot of developers are overwhelmed with the requests. So it's going to take us at least the next 6 months to find someone, if you ask me. But of course, I would say the main focus for us right now is to definitely identify our team, do the pro forma, but first and foremost, secure the site, the first site for the pilot. And that's where we're waiting for the city. The city tends to move on a different speed, and we're being patient, but sometimes it's like, man, is this a crisis or not? So, but that's what we are hoping to hopefully close the deal on that within the next two, but if not 3 months, will be okay too. So what is that? For those who have, thank you. Okay. So was there any other question, Tarani?
I think we answered most of them along the way. I'm not sure if the person who asked the intergenerational question felt like it was well answered, or if we should go deeper into that, because that is a core piece of this model. Did we feel like that question was answered? Was it Alex that asked? I'm not too
Yeah,
sure.
I think you actually answered it really well. But I think to your point, it is so important, and I think it ties into a lot of the other things that you're incorporating, like for instance the innovation hub. That's basically where you could even have more of that intergenerational conversation. But I also think it ties into the last thing I pointed out, the healing aspect of tying back to roots and organizations and regions in Africa. I think all that is tied together, and I would be really interested in hearing whether or not you have those conversations around whether or not that's part of the healing process, if it's part of kind of the innovation hub and aspects of that, just to see how people who, and especially youth that are involved in the innovation hub or community hub and learning skills, how they can be connected with organizations that are doing great work in Africa, seeing how they can kind of tie into aspects of that is happening there, and whether that could play a part both in healing but also in intergenerational conversations.
Yeah, and it goes back to as looking at partners. It's definitely going to be important for us to look at. There is a lot of people I know, and by the way, I saw somebody highlighting a piece around NAPS. I didn't get to read that message, but there is a lot of people that have been reaching out to us throughout the project about connecting to some of the people on the continent, especially in the area of mental health and healing, traditional healing, natural. The people who are taking natural approaches, which is where we are, and of course, our organization is also looking in. Hopefully, we'll see when that's going to happen. But we're also looking at ways to provide mental health services that are geared in like holistic mental health approaches. So it's not always you get depressed and it's medication. Like there is so many ways to solve mental health crisis, and I think when you're in Canada, in most of the Western developing world, developed world, the answer is always medication, and sometimes that's necessary, but it's not always the answer for everybody. So we're looking at ways to actually bring in, really sort of map out what's being done across the globe, especially on the continent. And then, of course, here, South America, Caribbeans, and provide a holistic approach to mental health services. All right. And again, this is as we mentioned, we believe this model could be used by any community. It doesn't have to be the African community. We think, for example, Indigenous community or anyone who really wants to kind of live in that connected world, this is something that they can take advantage of. But what we also wanted to do, because it's important for us to create that pilot so people can see what we mean when we for example, some of the pieces that I didn't share, but like when you walk into high-rise buildings, you walk out of an elevator, you often walk out to an empty space. That's really to a space that's almost like it's just quiet. It's private. What we want to create is something that put libraries, put like spaces for people to read books, that creates more opportunity for people to connect. So even within your apartment spaces, you have opportunity to connect with your neighbors, which is what that's the traditional African way. So being able to connect with people at any time, of course, maybe putting measures so people are not making noise, but that's something that we're looking to do, making sure that those pieces that might not be seen otherwise are actually pieces that we focus on to make sure that people are connected and they're ready to support one another. But I know we've gone over time, so I'll just stop here. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity, and looking forward to continuing to be part of this incredible group.
Yeah, well, thank you both for your time, the information you shared, the little bit of history that you gave about yourselves. Kizito, you said two things about specifically being rooted in something at the beginning and in regards to having love within reciprocity. And I think that, yeah, those will definitely resonate with the group. But yeah, thanks again for your time. And anything that was not captured in the recording should be hopefully in the notes, or if there are any chatters needed afterwards, we can share contact information. But thank you again, and hopefully everyone has a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.